From birth, she was surrounded by luxury. Born into a glittering European court, a princess was to be a symbol of hope and the future of her dynasty. Dynastic alliances, balls, palaces, and titles awaited her. But life ordered otherwise. Instead of an imperial crown, isolation. Instead of family, treason. Instead of children, sickness and infertility. And in the end, total oblivion. This is the story of a woman whose life should have been a fairy tale, but turned out to be a silent tragedy. Stéphanie Clementine of Belgium was born on May 21, 1864, at the Royal Palace of Laeken near Brussels. She was the second daughter of Prince Leopold, heir to the young Belgian throne, and the Austrian Archduchess Maria Henrietta of the Habsburg dynasty. Her entire family was a symbol of the ambitions of young Belgium, a small but aspiring power. When Stéphanie was a year and a half old, her grandfather, King Leopold I, died, and her father became King Leopold II. To the public, he looked like an enlightened monarch, expanding the country's influence, building palaces and decorating cities. But behind the facade lay a grim truth. His rule in the Congo became synonymous with brutality and colonial terror. The economic power on which Stéphanie grew was based on suffering. Millions of Congolese were subjected to slave labor and repression on rubber plantations. The wealth in which her sisters and herself were raised was soaked in blood. The family life of the king and queen was from the beginning a marriage of convenience. Maria Henrietta was a woman of refined taste, fond of music and horses. Leopold was cold and focused on politics. Their children, Louise, Leopold Jr., Stéphanie and Clementine, grew up in an atmosphere of alienation. The parents were distant from each other, and after the death of their son at the age of 10, the relationship cooled. Stéphanie, unlike her older sister, was not capricious or prone to rebellion. She accepted the rules of royal etiquette, studied hard, and spoke several languages. She was brought up as a future queen or empress, and at the age of 14, she began to be prepared for the main role of her life. In 1878, she was introduced to Crown Prince Rudolf, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was 20, she was only 14. But politics was above age. They needed to create an alliance between the two monarchies. Vienna hoped that marriage to a Belgian princess would bring stability and strengthen the Habsburg dynasty. In May 1881, a lavish wedding ceremony took place in Vienna. Crowds of people, orchestras, gold and marble. Everything seemed perfect. But as in the case of her parents, there was a crack behind the grand facade. Rudolf wasn't just complicated, he was broken. The pressures placed on him from his youth had worn him down. He was obsessed with politics but lacked power, passionate about science but faced censorship. He was cramped in his own role and increasingly sought solace in alcohol and women. Stéphanie at first tried to maintain the semblance of marriage. In 1883, she gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth. But for Rudolf, it became a disappointment. He was expecting a son. He became increasingly distant, and Stéphanie soon discovered something much worse than indifference. Rudolf had infected her with venereal diseases, most likely syphilis and gonorrhea. The doctors did not name the diagnoses out loud at the time, but the symptoms were clear. By the age of 22, Stéphanie had lost the ability to have children. It didn't just ruin the marriage, it deprived her of the most important monarchical function of all, the continuation of the family. In the eyes of the court, she became useless. In the late 1880s, Rudolf disappeared more and more often to the hunting castle of Merling. There he spent time with his young mistress, Baroness Maria Večera. His behavior became increasingly unpredictable. He wrote manifestos, spoke of death, spoke of the end of the empire. On the morning of January 30th, 1889, came the news that shocked all of Europe. Rudolf and Maria were found dead. He had shot her and then himself. Stéphanie, who was only 24, was left a widow, barren, lonely, and in the eyes of the court, meaningless. After the tragedy, Stéphanie wanted to return to Belgium, but her daughter, Elizabeth, was part of the Habsburg dynasty. The Austrian court refused to let her go. In Vienna, she was shunned as a living reminder of the disgrace. The only light was the Polish Count Arthur Potocki, intelligent, loyal, sincere. He loved Stéphanie, and she seemed to feel warmth for the first time. But a year later, he died of cancer before he reached 40. In the 1890s, Stéphanie met Hungarian aristocrat Elmer Lonyai. Their union was for love, not calculation. But King Leopold II opposed it. He called the marriage a disgrace. In letters, he refused her blessing, but Stéphanie fought back. In 1900, they married and she lost her titles. Officially, she was no longer empress or crown princess, only the wife of a Hungarian count. Later, it turned out that Leopold had also deprived her of her inheritance. Just before his death, he secretly married a young mistress and bequeathed everything to her. Stéphanie sued, and after 5 years of struggle received a part, 5 million francs, but not forgiveness. In 1914, Franz Ferdinand, the man Leopold had once wanted to give Stéphanie away to, was assassinated. His death became the spark for World War I. Germany invaded Belgium. Stéphanie was trapped. Having lived in Austria-Hungary, she now belonged to the side occupying her homeland. With her husband, she moved to a secluded mansion in Slovakia, away from the war. There, they took up charity work. When the war ended, the monarchy collapsed and the Habsburgs were deposed, but Stéphanie was not banished. She was forgotten. In the 1930s, she wrote a memoir, I Should Have Been Empress. But there was almost no account of her second life. It was as if everything after 1889 wasn't worth mentioning, as if she died with Rudolph. During World War II, she hid in the monastery from the advancing Red Army. There, in August 1945, at the age of 81, Stéphanie died. Her daughter never showed up at the funeral. The princess, who was prepared from childhood for a great role, ended her life in the monastery's silence. Isolated, abandoned, forgotten. The story of Stéphanie of Belgium is not just a story of lost power. It is the story of a woman who tried to be more than a link in a dynastic chain and was punished for it.